Good morning, everyone. It is February 2nd. This is the Kops office hours, open discussion on all topics Kops, particularly the development of new features. And we have a bunch of items on the agenda for today. So I guess, I think the first one on the agenda, Gamble, is not here. So actually, well, Chris, why don't we go straight to Okay, go on.
I put Gamble's item on because yesterday he said he'd be on, but he's not here.
Well, let's pause it and come back to it because he might join. I doubt it given how late it is there, but let's pause it and come back to it. And then, Chris, did you put the certificate error with Node up?
Yeah, I did. So been having I think the fix is that you have to use a custom Node up right now off of master branch, or else it just doesn't work. Like you have to use master Node up and master Kops together. But we have a new, Justin, with the key set changes you made, we have a new manifest that goes into the state store. Is that correct?
Correct. And yes, that does require a new Node up.
Now, what happens with upgrades when the Kops update runs, does that new key set manifest get generated?
Yeah, the tougher question with downgrades, but yes.
Yeah. So we got to test upgrades. We got to test upgrades and downgrades because we might not be able to downgrade from Kops 1.9 to Kops 1.8. I think we've introduced a breaking change.
Yeah, I ran into this because I was testing the CLI locally, but I hadn't built Node up. And so unknowingly, I started running into this. But once I rolled back, all I had to do was delete that file, and then things worked fine.
Yeah, so maybe...
Okay, so you're able to roll back to Kops 1.8 then?
Correct, yeah.
And all you had to do is delete that file in the state store.
Yep.
So yeah, so what the file is it is a single file that contains all the keys that are otherwise spread in multiple files. It also has the same format as the Kops server thing, and the Kops server format. So it's an API object. So it's a little bit better on that front. And the other thing it does is it avoids, and the real motivation was it avoids having to do a list operation, which is actually problematic on GCE and, in theory, other backend stores. So what I suggest we do is the minute we do Kops 1.9 alpha 1 or the next whatever release we do, that will include a new node up, and that will get rid of the sort of annoying problem, which is that you currently have to build a new node up. Then the problem that remains is if you use Kops 1.9 and then go back to Kops 1.8, that will, on the same cluster, that will be the keyset.yaml file will be there and NodeUp doesn't like it, and that will barf. The two options I see are we have instructions on how to downgrade, which is delete keyset.yaml, or we do a fix before we do 1.9. We do a 1.8.1 that ignores keyset.yaml. And then we say to people, you can downgrade, but when you downgrade, go to Kops 1.8.1, don't go to Kops 1.8.0.
Yeah, I think I like the second option better. I'd rather keep people out of the state store.
Particularly given we're deleting. All right, I can do that. Anyway, yeah, that's not too much work. I don't know whether we have anything else we want to get into 1.8. I guess is the question. Any other critical fixes? Kops 1.8.0. Or whether we should just roll forward. Sorry.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. We're long past due on 1.9. Rather focus on that.
I'm not sure. Yeah, we're past due on 1.9. I wouldn't say we're long past due on 1.9. But yes. Okay. So yeah, so 1.8.1 and then 1.9.0 alpha 1 or beta 1, whatever we're going to call it. Okay. And next item on the agenda is changing or increasing the key size for, I guess, all keys that we generate by default.
Yeah, there's a PRN. I just wanted to see if anybody could figure out how this might blow up on us. Whenever we start messing with keys, it makes me nervous. I'm paranoid about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the risk is that some library out there doesn't like the new key size because this is used by. What I'll do is I'll look at GKE and or GCE and see what key size they use. If they use a longer key, then we'll match their key size. If they don't, I think we should make it a environment variable or a feature flag or something, just because otherwise it's just
risky. It's risky.
This isn't too bad because once the keys are created, they don't tend to get they won't be recreated. So this isn't, what I'm always concerned about with a feature flag or an environment variable or something like that is you have to remember to pass it every time. That won't be a huge issue here because as long as you pass it the first time, you'll be fine. Okay. And Chris, you said end-to-end testing is now green except for NVMe testing.
Woohoo! Yeah. Checked it this morning. I manually ran 1.9 3 times, had 2 flakes and 1 complete pass. So that's really good. So all were passes, but I had a couple tests fail, right, which were flakes.
Yeah, looks like we have a lot more green. We were having a really weird pattern with 1.9 where it was half on half, 1 fail, 1 pass, 1 fail, 1 pass, like continuously. That seems to have stopped. I don't know what changed, but and we just had a red. But other than that, I think we're okay. We're certainly good enough to do an alpha or a beta at this point. Yeah. Okay. And then, yeah, it's weird. The weave one is. Oh no, the weave one is fine. The weave one is that TCP wait. Okay. And then. Yeah, so other things. So if we try to do 1.9 beta, or do, Chris, you said beta. I've been saying alpha. Should we do beta?
I don't care.
Yeah, all right. So if we
Alpha's great.
All right, we can go
Alpha's awesome.
Alpha 1 or beta 1. We can do alpha 1, I think, without too much risk. And then the things that I would love to see in 1.9 are the big changes are that I'd love to see EDE testing has been a pain, or EDE testing in the images has been a super pain point for the past month with all the Spectre thing, and switching AWS accounts meant nothing was working basically for a whole month. But I think we're finally turned the corner on that one. And we do have an RBAC change going in, Chris. You changed the default to enable RBAC, which is a fairly big change. Yep. But GKE has done it as well, I think.
I checked with Leggett, and all of the installers are basically doing it now.
Well,
yeah, all the other folks are.
Yeah, well, in terms of market share, that isn't, the majority might not be on the RBAC, but I guess we have to at some point. Okay. Yeah, we're not going to turn on authorization. We're just going to turn on RBAC.
And does that turn on for existing clusters or just new clusters?
I think it's just new clusters. It just changes the default. It's still, I mean, it's easy to turn on RBAC in your existing cluster if you want to, and I think it's easy to change. So we release out.
I need to look at the change. Did I just do the change in create, or did I do the change in defaults? If I did the change in defaults, then it would, if you can update a cluster, it's going to go to RBAC.
I think you just did it. Yes, it should be in create, because it shouldn't. We don't want to touch any cluster that might not have had it. I can't imagine there are any left at this point that have it not set either way. But
yeah, that's all I wanted to check. Cool.
Yeah, it's in create. So yeah, that's great. And then something, GCE is now at a point where I think it's ready to go to remove the alpha feature gate. So that's another change that I'll put in to 1.9. Doesn't block an alpha or whatever. And then the final one is etcd 2 was deprecated. etcd 3 isn't deprecated yet. etcd 2 was deprecated in 1.9. And so I'm talking to SIG Cluster Lifecycle on Tuesday about something I've been working on, which is, an etcd manager approach. I think the critical thing that we need is backups of etcd to start happening. There is a format which like this etcd manager thing does, but it's a very simple like on S3 format. So I would love to I'm going to try to get something in to basically start backing up etcd, not necessarily restoring it yet, just backing it up. My proposed plan there is to get etcd backups working and continue with the current etcd system. And then in a future release of Kops, be it 1.10 or 1.11, I guess probably in 1.10, enable you to switch out for the etcd manager, assuming or whatever we decide, but not forcing you to do it. And so the idea would be you're able to back up using the current system. You're able to, if you have to restore from a complete disaster, you can do that, but you might have to switch to the etcd manager to make that happen. And then eventually we can make the etcd manager the default. Hooray! And my gamble paid off. It actually worked. So yes, we were pausing your item, and so we weren't thinking you were gonna make it. But yeah, it's great to have you here. So we're just talking about, and then so that's the last 1.9 thing that I'd love to get into 1.9, but again, is not a blocker. And so we can rotate around to the first item on the agenda, which is rolling update strategies.
Cool. Let me bring it up. Yes. So I don't know, because I mean, after your last comment, I was kind of like, are we just going to wait for Machines API, or are we going to go ahead with that?
What do you want to do?
I don't know. When is Machines API coming out?
When you write it.
I'll give. So I think they're looking for somebody to start adopting it with AWS. I think it's in serious alpha, is the way I describe it. And I don't think we have a set yet. Is that a good status, Justin? We only have Machine API, which is an instance.
Yeah, I think actually that some guys are from, I think, Lutz. I don't know. Some people are working on it. There are multiple implementations. It has good momentum. There are people working on it. I certainly have not seen a drop-in yet for this, so I am inclined to not wait, as you say, as long as it's not too invasive. Remind me, did you put it as a flag, or did you put it on the instance group itself?
So both. You can actually annotate the instance groups. And I dropped, sorry, it's been a while since I looked at it. I dropped the drain as a feature flag, so now it's just an option on the actual rollout. But by default, it's not turned on.
Not turned on, okay.
Yeah. I think. Let me just double check. Where am I? No, I definitely turned it off. So I kept the same behavior as it was before. So you still need to turn on the feature flag. So you still need to turn on the flag, just like you would turn on a feature flag. So it was the same behavior as before, but obviously the code is completely different.
Okay. I mean, I think given the timing, if you want the feature, I'm inclined to say that we merge it in, and I mean, obviously we'll do reviews and that sort of stuff, but I'm inclined to say we get the feature in, and it guides. My sense is that we can help guide the Machines API either by the ideas or by actual code. And so if we know we want things from real world experience, we should get them into our code so that they can have that as a point of reference. Or we can just take the code and use it.
API, it's actually part of Kubernetes, though, right? It's just another controller, I'm assuming.
It isn't. Yeah. So part of Kubernetes is a tricky thing,
Right.
but it will be an API type and a set of API types: machine set maybe, and probably something else on top. A controller. I think it'll be more like Cloud Controller Manager. So it will be not in the core repo. It will not be mandatory on all clusters, but one might expect that within 2 years, most clusters are running it.
Got you.
Yeah, because the idea is that basically we have all these rolling update strategies, and they're inconsistent across the different Kubernetes installation methods, and some of them behave better for different use cases. And so if we have a use case, I think we should get it into ours, and then we can make it be in the official one. Or the other thing is that it may well end up that the machine controller. So there's So now here it's a bit more. So the machine controller. Sorry, go on.
How are you going to marry up all the stuff that NodeUp does with what the machine's API does? Because ultimately, it's got to pull down all that stuff and then take all that custom bespoke configuration, which you've just put into Kops, put in your own little YAML.
Right.
How are those two things going to marry up?
That's actually less of a problem, I think. So there's the machine API, which is basically I'm creating an instance on AWS, for example. Mm-hmm. There's a cluster API, which is very much even earlier than the machines API, which is what does my cluster configuration look like? And so that one is more of a conflict with the Kops cluster and is going to be trickier to marry up. The sort of general strategy there is to use component configuration, Kubernetes component configuration, so that there's more and more, there's less and less in the various configuration objects, and there's less to reconcile. When you actually go to create a machine, there's not a ton of configuration in that. And so we will have a Kops machine controller, which will go and create a machine or an instance for the machine using the Kops configuration. And that is actually on a branch, and I will be able to demo that at some stage. I was planning on demoing it in Wednesday week at the machines API thing. So in 10 days, 13 days, 10 days, 10 days sounds right. 12 days, that sounds more accurate. 12 days. But it's a proof of concept, but that's sort of one of the things that I'm working on is to make that happen. An interesting thing is there will sort of be two controllers. There's a machines controller, which just goes and creates the machines, but then we can have a separate controller, and we want a separate controller which actually does the rolling update here.
Right.
Because the idea being that you will have a GCE machine controller, you'll have a VMware machine controller, and you want to use the same rolling update strategy regardless of which machine controller you use. So that's a whole nother axis where I don't know whether we would actually want to have a different machine, like a Kops machine controller versus a GKE a Kops update controller, machine rolling update controller versus a GKE rolling update controller. That sort of defeats half the point, which is that we want to find one good one. But I mean, I think Kops likely currently has the best, I will say, and so we should make it better, and then we have a good chance of being that one.
All right. Cool. I will go back to the PR. I think I pretty much commented out the entire testing for it, so I need to put that back in and try and do some useful tests in it.
Yeah, and so as long as it's flags, I think it's great. If we start changing the API, then I'm now getting more worried about like synchronizing the API objects. But as long as it's more and more flags, that's wonderful.
So the only change to the API was the fact that you can actually annotate the instance groups with the strategy. So that way you don't actually specify it on the command line. It's just carried forward as a, on the actual instance group itself. And then if you want to override it, you can actually do that on the command line as well. Just makes it a little bit more complicated.
Yeah. I quite like that still. I don't know. What do you think? It's certainly going to be, so the problem is that then at some point, we're going to have to reconcile that with whatever comes down the pipeline. But I certainly think that the idea of having a different rolling update strategy for your instance group, which hosts your Cassandra cluster, than the one which hosts your web server, makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. You don't need to think about it. You just say, hey, roll this out, and the strategy is already predetermined.
And we have that in deployments. So, okay. I will also take another pass at the PR and see if there's anything that I think is going to be that's just my concern at this point, is just whether it paints us into a corner that makes it hard to given we know Machines API is coming, whether it's hard there. But I think it's going to be okay from what I've learned since I haven't looked at the PR in a little while. So.
Yeah, neither have I. I thought you'd pretty much quit on it. So I will. I'll go back at it and have a look.
Wonderful. Sorry about that.
It's cool. Don't worry.
Cool. Well, I think we've actually covered everything on the agenda, I think, unless someone has added stuff. I don't know if people have other things they want to talk about, or...
Oh, sorry, you're muted.
You just mute me?
Yeah.
I was just talking. Shit. So yeah, I had another PR, which was the Calico TLS. So this gives the compute nodes access to a certificate to talk to etc.d, which we broke when we added TLS to etc.d. Well, we didn't break, but stopped the feature. Let me just put it onto the. Can you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I think there's another one actually. Gamble 99.
That sounds like a
Did you ever?
Right.
Did you have a chance to fix the certificate problem that was found in your PEM testing?
That's not actually I didn't actually create the problem. That's to do with the key set YAML, isn't it?
Use bundle.
So I think that's actually on master. It's not actually on my branch.
Oh, is there a problem? Is there a problem with key set YAML?
Yeah, there's been a problem for a while. It's basically whenever you when you do a create on the first time, it's fine. If you do an update, you're screwed.
So if you've already got a cluster before that PR went in for keyset.yaml, the file doesn't exist in S3, and then when you update the cluster, because it doesn't create those secrets, it expects them already to be there in the S3 bucket. It errors because they don't actually exist.
And would that be fixed within the we talked about this. We talked about a related issue, which is, if you're using an old node up with new cops, master cops.
Yeah.
Then we hit that.
So there's two slightly different issues there.
What's the second?
Yeah, I was actually referring to something else that happened a long time ago. You guys had a PEM test, and they discovered that there was a TLS problem with the way that you guys set up TLS with etcd. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's another PR. That's been hanging around since December 4th.
Is that the one you just sent me?
I just sent you that now. You can just forward it on to them.
Yeah, we do have.
I know you had some challenges with rolling update with that. I think was the last conversation that we had.
Yes. So this is the fact there were two different environment variables, which is etc.d peer client, or basically just it ensures that the client certificate was signed by the CA. So at the moment, what we have is we do have client certificates, but it doesn't actually verify that it was actually signed by the CA. Why? I don't know why that's a default. I have no idea. But apparently, you have to specify these two environment variables to actually enforce it.
Okay, we'll definitely get this in. I think this is a good one to get in, and yes, obviously. And I'm not quite sure why it's not in, but I will have a look at why it's not in.
It's because of the way in which you have to roll it out if you already have a class that's on etc.d. Because of, if I remember correctly,
About this, right?
yeah, because of the way in which the etc.d classes have to pull down the certificate before they can use it. So when you roll out the first one, he then turns on enforcement, and the other two can't talk to it anymore because they don't have the new client certificate. And then it does work because you can, as long as you have three in a cluster, because the first one rolls out, the other two can't talk to it, but it's fine. The second one rolls out, and then they form a cluster, and then the third one you're back in play.
I think what would be good is to get an E to E test that doesn't upgrade. I will write that down. Like that is I think we're doing okay on test coverage, except we obviously don't have that. For keyset.yaml, what we talked about before you were on was the idea of that I will do a Kops 181, which will essentially just add ignoring keyset.yaml. And what that means is it will give people, first of all, it will immediately unblock the problem where we break things where people are running master in an old node up, because the default on master will then be 181 and then shortly after 190 alpha 1 or beta 1. The other thing it does is it gives people the ability to downgrade. So if something goes without having to delete keyset.yaml. So if you try Kops 190, you decide you hate it, you downgrade to Kops 181. As long as you go to 181 and not 180, you're okay. So we'll have a little note that, like, if you downgrade the same cluster, then do that. But you're saying there's also another problem where when you try to do an update, it doesn't work correctly.
Yes.
And that's even if you're running the correct node up.
Yes, okay. That's right. Yeah. So that's the third link I've posted.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll have to read this but this is different from the node up mismatch.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so it's using newly built node up. So if you have a cluster that before the PR that you raised, which got merged in, so you've created a cluster, but keyset.yaml isn't in S3. When you then update to a new version using the new node up binary, it expects it's got use bundle set to true. It expects keyset.yaml to exist in S3, but of course it wouldn't have created it. Because it's just a cluster update and not a fresh creation of a new cluster.
Oh, but this was running the Kops CLI updated as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that is a bug. So it should have what it was.
So,
yeah, it's supposed to write keyset YAML, right?
Yeah. So I was thinking on an update, it should check if it doesn't exist and create it in S3 alongside the update where it's
Yeah, that's
updating the rest of the cluster spec.
That makes sense. Creates its own. Okay. Thank you for finding that. Yeah, that's a bug. Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, well, it was the general question of whether Kops is compatible with 1.9 at the moment. I haven't actually tried, but in case anyone here actually knows.
We believe it to be. We're going to do the beta 1, and E to E is fine. I don't know if anyone's actually running it.
Right. So don't put it in production yet. Okay. What about the oh god, what's that admission controller? Is it node authorizer?
We have not done that yet.
Do you have any thoughts about how you're going to distribute the certificates, the boxes?
Yes.
Okay,
So
cool.
here's what I found. All right, so okay. I think I did it right, and it proved to be not any better security right now.
Right.
You ended up having to distribute a different key, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, you have to give it a certificate which has a different common name in it for every node.
Right. What is interesting is with the machines API, if we enroll a node from the master, so it's I don't know. That's the other fly in the ointment here. The machines API has the notion that the controller effectively creates the machines. And so at least for the masters, sorry, at least for the non-masters, the nodes themselves, you could create that node secret in the machine controller and push it out and actually really, really lock down the nodes at that point. Like they wouldn't need access to the bucket almost at all.
Right.
So that to me is a very interesting, like much even higher security option. But yeah, we have to enable the node authorizer. I'll write it down and see what we can do. But
how would you pass it to the node? Would you just pass it through metadata service, or would you pass it through user data stuff?
One option is to use SSH.
Okay.
It's not a great option.
No, it's an easy way of doing it.
I mean, I don't know is the answer. The appeal of SSH is that you can do
Agnostic.
Sorry?
Agnostic.
Exactly, and also it goes away, so it's not in the metadata where there's a risk that it leaks. There's no need for an IAM role, maybe.
Yeah.
There's no intrinsic need for an IAM role to access S3, so it has its appeals. The alternative would be to do a proprietary SSH protocol, right? That doesn't feel like a huge win. It might be nice not to have SSH open, or not to rely on SSH. But I don't. If we're going to have something that is similar to SSH anyway, I'm not overly convinced on that point. I don't know. Anyway,
you can sell OPSEC groups on SSH. Selling OPSEC groups on proprietary protocol, yeah, that ain't going to happen.
Well, I mean, it would be a very limited one that just basically grabs that. I mean, that's what we have today, right? It's a proprietary protocol to do like the CSR, the certificate request handshake is essentially a fancy limited protocol to get that SSH, to get that certificate. Anyway, I think we can't wait for the Machines API to make it happen. The Machines API may invalidate a lot of what we've done or what we're doing here. So maybe we do something that we're not 100% happy with and say that like the real security comes when we do the Machines API. So in other words, it's okay today to do a bit of a song and dance, which doesn't really achieve very much, because we believe the real answer is or a more secure answer comes later. So actually it's like, so the machine controller, like proof of concept I have right now runs on VMware for crazy reasons. Basically because I didn't want to use any cloud stuff. So I was like VMware, all right. And then it creates a bundle of the files that would otherwise get from S3, SCPs them across to the target, and runs node up from a file system, which the local thing. I don't think it's currently generating a per node certificate, but it could.
Sure.
So, and that works pretty well. So it's yeah. So I guess knowing that that is coming, or that sort of thing is an option, then we can do something a little bit more mainstream in the medium term.
Cool. Anything new?
No, nothing from me. I'm just testing Cetra version 3.3. Actually, I don't know if you remember, I raised an issue a while back about the MVCC database size exceeded. So 3.3 was officially released yesterday, I believe.
Hooray!
So, which resolves the issue. Sorry?
You can probably thank Red.
Yes, yeah. So I'm just testing that out. I'll probably have a minor PR to support a couple of very small changes in Kops for it.
Okay, that's great. Are there changes needed other than
So what I found at the moment, it was just mostly around when the way that it logs to standard out and to into var log etc. There was, I think, the path for T command had changed. So it's just a very minor correction.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so actually, yeah. So this is something I just put in recently. So we had so we always log to var log. We also now send it to standard out, so it appears in Docker logs, kubectl logs. We used to do that with a bash pipe to T. Something like the upstream, which pointed out that shell without exec means that your processes don't respond very well to signals anymore.
Sure.
So there's something using MkFIFO, and T.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I did like the little hack. Background DT. Which
what you have to do if you want to do it in whatever shell BusyBox uses, I guess it's dash rather than bash. And anyway, but yes, the path, we had the same problem where it changed in various Kubernetes releases, but I didn't do it for etcd for some silly reason. But if you just basically remove bin, it's typically on the path.
Yeah. So I'm just reusing what you've got there.
That's great, because then hopefully we can get rid of, that'd be good. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, that's great news, because I'm glad they released that, because that was a pretty serious issue, it looked like.
Yes, the only other issue is that so where they now store the new etcd versions differs from what was originally hard-coded in Protocube, I think it was, for the etcd image. Someone's actually introduced a PR to allow you to override that, passing an image property in the etcd cluster spec. So you can use that now and just pass the new path to GCR etcd development. For the new
is it a new field? Sorry, is it a new field, or is it just a version? Is it do they reuse?
It's a new field, so it overrides the version flag.
Okay.
But although you still need version, version is used somewhere else. I can't remember, so you can't actually drop that. I need to have a look at what that's used.
I'm wondering whether we could infer. Yeah.
We have to know for etcd or etcd3 or etcd2 for the API server. And from a container, you could, have Joe Blow container version 4. So we need to know whether it's 2 or 3.
Right.
So maybe in future we can drop the version field. We make the version field optional by looking at the image name and deciding whether it's that.
Right, but I can have Chris Love :45 as my etcd container.
Yeah. So if you had :45, you would also have to specify the etcd version. But for most people that run one of the stock images, we would recognize them, I guess. But hopefully we can. First of all, hopefully there will never be an etcd4. Hopefully, and hopefully everyone will get on it.
Dynamo DD for the win.
Okay, that sounds great. Specifying the image sounds great. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's the PR backlog, which we have to work our way through as well to before we do 1.9. It's sort of gotten a bit out of hand with all the fun.
Great.
No one else has anything else. I will wish you all a happy Friday. I'm just checking the agenda, see if for any last minute drop-ins, but it looks good. So yes. We'll try to get 1.81 and 1.90, maybe even this weekend. I don't know. I think I've said that before, and it tends to not go well. We'll see. I don't think I have anything on this weekend. So,
real quick question, Justin. When do you want to do the update for the kernel? When do you feel it's appropriate? Because I know there's a couple other patches out.
I mean, it's never ending, right? I don't know if anyone has any particular. It would be good to pass that test, right? Someone wrote a tester.
Yeah, it's in Ubuntu or Debian, one of the two.
It's what?
It's one of the distros. It's the writer test. It's either Debian or Ubuntu that wrote that utility.
Yeah. So I will have a look at where we are on the kernel, and I guess do another image. I'm worried that we're not building with the right flags. So even if we had an up-to-date kernel, that we now need to pass new flags. So I need to find out whether we're missing some flags or a different compiler or whatever magic it is that is today's fix for the unfixable issues. But I'll write it down. That's less of a time sink and more of yeah, that's actually not too bad. It's just yeah. Cool. Otherwise, who's going to Copenhagen? No?
What's in Copenhagen?
KubeCon EU in this is in
Let's see if one of my talks gets accepted. Then I'll have to talk to the wife on a Copenhagen vacation.
Copenhagen in May is beautiful, I believe. I don't know.
I don't know that Copenhagen's never beautiful. So.
I think it gets very cold, right? But
cold doesn't mean it's not beautiful. Cold actually at times is really beautiful.
okay.
But yeah, it can be unpleasant.
Well, on that note, I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday and weekend. And I hope to see if I go to Copenhagen, some of you in Copenhagen. I'm not sure yet, but yes, it's a long way away anyway.
Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Take
See ya.
care. Ciao.
Thank you.
See you.